Welcome everyone. In case you didn't figure it out yet, I am Tristan, this is Heidi, and today we are talking about how you can attach the power of your Microsoft 365 cloud to your existing config manager environment. I'm going to start by inventing a word and describing what our cloudiest customers look like. Our cloudiest customers use many Office 365 services. They are on the current versions of Windows and Office Pro Plus. They rely on the intelligence and speed of our cloud security services like Defender ATP. They provision all of their devices with autopilot and land them in an Azure D-joined state. And they, of course, manage all their endpoints with Intune. And this is a great place to be. There's no doubt that if you are ready to go all in the cloud, Microsoft 365 has the most comprehensive and secure and easy-to-use solution available. All right? So go and do that. Thanks for coming today, everyone. I've taught you everything you need to know. Heidi, let's pack up our things and call it a day.
All right.
For those on the webcast right now, as I look out in the crowd, I see ConfigMgr MVPs reaching for blunt objects, presumably to throw at me. So I think I should talk some more. There is a reason you are all here. There's a reason this room is filled with Config Manager customers, and there is a reason that the Config Manager community is the most tight-knit, dare I say cult-like tech community I have ever seen in my entire life. You have all invested a ton in Config Manager over the last 20+ years, from people to process to systems integration, and it works great. You're not going to just rip and replace all of this infrastructure on a whim because I showed you a picture of a happy IT lady dancing in the clouds, right? But some of those bullets on the last slide were interesting. You are at this session because you're interested in adding value from the Microsoft 365 cloud, and you're looking for guidance on how to do it. And so that's what this session will be. And I have good news for you. I want to be super crisp on this first point because it is without a doubt the FAQ for our team. Config Manager is not going away. It will be here as long as you need it. And for the rest of this session, we're going to be showing you just how easy it is to add the value of the M365 Cloud to your existing Config Manager environment. So we're not talking about Intune or Config Manager. We're talking about Intune and Config Manager. We at Microsoft, of course, want you to use a lot of our cloud services, but our strategy is to not force you into using them. Our strategy is to make it really easy for you to access them and deploy them when you want to use them, when the time is right. So what we're trying to enable is unified and flexible endpoint management in a way that only Microsoft can give you. And we're a few days deep into this conference now, so you've probably seen this slide already. The first 6 rows talk about the things you can do with your existing on-prem environment. And the bottom 7 rows show you the new things you can do with availability of the cloud. This session is about those bottom 7 things and how you can add those things to your existing on-prem environment. And a key point here is we're not saying all or nothing. You don't have to pick the entire green box. You pick the thing in the green box, whichever row is of most interest to you, and we'll show you how you can implement that thing first. So before I get into unified endpoint management, I want to give a little bit of context on the consoles at Microsoft. About a year ago, we did an inventory and realized we had like 25 consoles, and so that was a problem. We've done a lot of work to aggregate and build towards this hub and spoke model you see here. And so that big circle in the middle, this is admin.microsoft.com. This is our hub. And you can think of this as the place where IT generalists will go. So kind of think of SMB IT, where there's a bunch of kind of bubbled up common tasks there. And then the spokes This is for you guys more likely. In the enterprise, as we know, there's teams of people that specialize on certain areas kind of for their full-time job. So whether that's identity, security, or in the case of this room, device management. So I want to show you this now. This is, at this conference, is the first time we're really talking about this publicly. This is going to be the cloud console where you do all of your device and app management. And I specifically say cloud console because this doesn't change that you're going to be doing your on-prem device and app management in ConfigMgr. But as you are looking more into the cloud and you want to discover and configure more cloud-driven scenarios, this is the console you will go to. And so this is devicemanagement.microsoft.com, which you can bookmark. It exposes all of the Intune functionality in here. It exposes the relevant Azure AD functionality in here. In the future, it will expose device analytics functionality in here. And really, anything that we think that you're going to need for cloud management, for device and app management in the future, we will expose that and integrate it here. You can see that there's a customizable dashboard. And really, if you go to log into this right now, what you're most likely going to see in that bottom left tile dashboard of the dashboard is a list of all of your Android and iOS devices that are managed by Intune. And most likely, most of your PCs are managed in SCCM. And so if you do that simple 4-click process that Kent showed us at the keynote on Monday, it's really as easy as that, as now you will be able to see all of your SCCM managed devices in this console as well. There is no impact to your existing SCCM configurations. There is zero impact to your end users. We silently enroll the devices behind the scenes. And so now, with very little effort, zero risk, you start to get a unified look and limited management of all of your devices in this single console. And so with that, I'm going to hand off to Heidi. She's going to show you some more of the things that you can start doing from this console.
All right, so let's start from the console that Tristan just showed you. So you can see device enrollment status, configuration items, and compliance policies, and apps, and so many things that you care about for your devices. And this dashboard gives you an overview and for you to take actions based on the data you see. So what Tristan just talked about, the cloud attached value, that this is such a unified reporting system that in ConfigMgr 1806, we're officially supporting multi-tenancy of multiple config manager hierarchies attaching to the same Intune tenant, so that effectively all these devices that's known by Intune can all be shown up on the same console that you see here. So that's really the true beauty of the unified endpoint management, even for the devices that you're managing in the config manager side. And you can also easily go to different areas on the console. On the left-hand side, in the navigation bar, you can see all these different areas that you're interested in. And I'm just going to pick like troubleshooting blade, that if you go there, because sometimes your end users will call you and ask for help. And from there, you can select the user. Say, Chris has an issue. Give it a little bit time. Chris shows up, and you select Chris. And from the console, you can see the apps deployed to Chris. You can see all the devices associated to Chris. And you can tell that it's cross-platforms. You can see iPhones, you can see Windows devices. And this Windows device is actually already being co-managed by SCCM and Intune. So that's why it's showing managed by MDM and ConfigMgr. And from there, also that's a new feature in ConfigMgr 1806. You can actually go to the device, and that actually shows you the Intune device blade, and you can see the client health status from the device blade, so that probably many of you scratch your head wondering why some of the clients not reporting the right data, like how things go with those clients. So now, because Intune from the MDM side, it checks in more frequently, and it just only needs to connect to the cloud. So it actually has the status, the last status, that ConfigMgr client reports to Intune, and Intune can show that to you. So for a troubleshooting scenario, that's really a good help. That's pretty cool, huh? So, thank you. So with that, I'm handing back to Tristan so that he can talk about modern provisioning.
You switch back.
Yep.
So I'm not going to do a lot of depth on modern provisioning with Autopilot. We've had several dedicated sessions on this. If you're super interested, you've probably already learned about it. But in case you haven't heard the high-level story here, I'll kind of give you that. So the main kind of state-of-the-art with provisioning of PCs today is every new PC gets a custom image applied to it by IT before it gets handed off to users. This is very costly for you in IT. It's a very generic kind of user experience for the end user. And the vision here is that we'll be able to ship PCs directly to end users and then real-time configure them for the user's need. The high-level flow of what this looks like is we have this Autopilot service that keeps track of all of your PCs that are registered with it. The main way these PCs get registered is when you buy the PCs from your OEM or device vendor, you ask them, please register my devices with the Autopilot service for my company. Then when you log into that device management console, you will see all of the devices registered for your company. You'll be able to author a policy that specifies how you want to configure the out-of-box experience on each of these devices. This will get synchronized back up into that Autopilot service. Meanwhile, the hardware vendor ships the device directly to the end user. They open the box, they power it on. The device, as soon as it gets connectivity to the internet, it will check in with the service to see, am I a known device with the Autopilot service? If yes, those configurations will come down. And then the user doesn't get the standard out-of-box experience. They get a very simplified, guided experience that guides them into a state of management with Intune. And then before the user ever gets interactive access to the desktop, Intune will be pushing down applications, configurations, so it's ready to go for that user. So again, I'm not going to go through all the details of the history and future of Autopilot, but given the audience here, I did want to touch on these two things on the right that I think you'll be interested in. So Autopilot from the get-go has supported provisioning of new devices into a state of being Azure AD joined at the end of the UBI process. And so something we're announcing for 1809 release of Windows 10 is we're going to start having support for domain joining the device at the end. This is what we call hybrid Azure AD join, where it's domain joined and registered with Azure AD, but ultimately your users will be logging in with their domain accounts doing a domain logon. So this has been something we've been asked for a while, so this will be good. The second thing is we've had some customers say, well, we like this Autopilot experience so much. We like that we can do this for our new devices, but all of our devices are on Windows 7. Can you help me get my Windows 7 devices to Windows 10 with that great Autopilot experience? And so this will be available via ConfigMgr task sequence, such that the user will get a time to upgrade, and then they get that Autopilot experience. And then at the end of this, your devices are all registered with the Autopilot service. So the next time that you reset or repurpose this device, it's going to be ready to go with that out-of-box guided experience. The main point that I wanted to highlight for this particular session is for all of the Autopilot scenarios, you can pick just modern provisioning as the thing that you're most interested in. You can keep everything else in ConfigMgr exactly the same. You can go to that device management cloud console and go configure the out-of-box experience and say, at the end of the out-of-box experience, I want the ConfigMgr agent to be pushed down by Intune to that device. And then you manage that device just the same as any other ConfigMgr managed device. There's, of course, more you can do with Intune, but This is kind of to the original point of you don't need to do all or nothing. If you just want to do modern provisioning, it's really easy to do this and continue to manage the device with ConfigMgr. Make sense? Okay, and now Heidi is going to spend a good chunk of time kind of walking through more details. How do we actually set this up and explain these different ways you get into a co-managed state?
All right, thank you, Tristan. So let's get down to the house. There are two main paths to get to your devices to be cloud attached for existing ConfigMgr customers. The very first one that you're pretty familiar with, that you already have ConfigMgr managing those devices, and most likely those devices already are in the on-prem Active Directory. And you configure those devices to also have the cloud identity in Azure AD, which to get to the state of hybrid Azure AD join, which means it's on-prem AD join and AAD registered. In that state, that enables the device to authenticate through the cloud. And then you enable the Windows auto enrollment so that it gets automatically enrolled into Intune. And this process, as Tristan mentioned earlier, is very transparent. And from our early adopters, it seems to be really smooth, no end user impact. End user doesn't have to do anything additionally to what they already been doing on a daily basis. And the enrollment just happens behind the scenes. We've seen customers enrolling thousands of devices overnight. So it can really deal with scale. And the second path, Tristan just talked about modern provisioning. So there's a way after the device gets through the autopilot process, and you choose the device to be either Azure AD join or hybrid Azure AD join, depends on the needs from your organization. Some of you still use group policy, so that it makes sense for a device to be still on-prem in Azure in the Active Directory. So that's your choice. And once the devices are already enrolled into Intune, Intune can bootstrap the ConfigMgr agent and get it installed on the box, so that it also has both ConfigMgr and Intune MDM agent on the box, and with the either AAD join or hybrid AAD join. So it reached to the same end state in order to be in this co-managed state. And it's a coordinated effort between ConfigMgr and Intune, and I'll show you how. So as you can see from the previous slide, that you go through this process of getting your devices attached to the Intune cloud. You can tell there are a few key elements that you need to get ready. The first one is Azure AD, that you need to get your existing ConfigMgr managed devices to be hybrid AAD joined. So you get that set up, you get your AD to sync to AAD and all that stuff. And you also need to license your users with Azure AD, and it needs Azure AD Premium license. And you enable Windows 10 auto enrollment. So that's what you need to do on the Azure AD side. And for ConfigMgr, you will need the version of 17.10 or above. And a lot of customers have already been upgraded and have been keeping up with our current branch. So that seems to be a no-brainer that you're already there. And from the Intune side, you need to make sure that you have Intune standalone as your MDM authority. As we know, there are some customers are still in the legacy configuration of having Intune hybrid. They need to first migrate off of Intune hybrid configuration to make sure their users are set to MDM authority being Intune standalone in order to get co-management. And they also need to license the users with Intune. For Windows, the minimum OS needs to be Windows 10 17.09 or above. So with all these things that you need to get ready, is there a way for you to tell that how close you are? And yes, there is. So ConfigMgr, starting in 1802, that has a feature called Management Insights. ConfigMgr has been collecting a wealth of data from your devices. So we want to also use this data to help you to make some data-driven decisions. So there are rules built based on best practices, or there are rules built based on prerequisites that the feature needs. In this case, for co-management, ConfigMgr has a set of rules to tell you how ready you are. And I'll have a demo to get into more details for that. So the gist of management insights is that it gives you the guided experience for you to understand what needs to be done and what actions need to be taken. Okay, now you're ready. Everything is done. And you turn on co-management with this just 4 clicks process. Easy, right? So what next? What happens after you turn on co-management? What do you expect? This is what we call day 0 of cloud attach. So on day 0, as Tristan also mentioned earlier, there's really nothing changed for your existing processes. Whatever that you deployed through ConfigMgr is still flowing down to the client. So this is a high-level architecture diagram that we have. On the right-hand side, that's your ConfigMgr infrastructure, and it's managing. I'm using an example of a device that's hybrid AAD joined. So business as usual, you already have your policies all deployed to this device. And even if at this time you already have Intune configured and some policies deployed, you can see the policies actually are not going down to the device because Intune has this knowledge that this device is co-managed, but you haven't really given Intune any instruction that Intune needs to take over a certain workload, so that it just blocks the policy to go down to the device. So at this point, you are actually just benefiting from some immediate values that Intune has, like collecting inventory, like getting client health from for SCCM, or you can see multiple, you can see data from multiple hierarchies. Those are all the additional values you get out of attaching to the cloud, but you're not really changing any processes that you already have. That's a design principle that we're sticking to so that there's no surprises. You know what to expect. And only when you're decided that, oh, there's a workload I really want to try. Like you probably have seen from the previous sessions that we have great compliance policy evaluation from the Intune side. So you really want to try that. And then you give a very explicit instruction from the ConfigMgr console saying, I want to use Intune for my compliance policies. So with this opt-in model that we know that Intune now can take over. So what happens is that Intune policy is now flowing down for that specific workload. And ConfigMgr side, even though the deployments are still in place, the agent actually backs off for that particular workload. So with this illustration, it really, the main point that I wanted to make is that it's a very coordinated effort between ConfigMgr and Intune for you to do the workload transition if you want to use Intune for any workloads when you are ready. So there's really no agenda, nothing. Like it's really for those workloads for you to try. Okay. So in the summertime, we just released our latest ConfigMgr 1806. It has a lot of features in this release. And for co-management, what we had was that we baked in the logic in ConfigMgr so that the client information can be sent to Intune, as I mentioned earlier, so that Intune has the knowledge of the last state of the client. And the multi-tenancy support that we heard from a lot of you that you have dev, test, production environment, but from SCCM side, but you really want to use only one Intune tenant because that's really what your cloud identity system is. So with this, then these multiple hierarchies can attach to the same Intune tenant, and you get unified reporting from the Intune side. Workload-wise, we're completing the workloads to help you if you want to use Intune for any of the workloads. And most of them have corresponding workloads on the Intune side. And the newly added ones are device configuration, Office Pro Plus, and mobile apps. In mobile apps, it's in pre-release only. When I do demo, I'll get into more details. So we already talked about getting the client health information in the report, and I just listed all the status that we're aware that can be sent by Intune. And as you can see, we sent you the status, the description of the status, and the last check-in time from the ConfigMgr agent. In the description, some of the error messages even show you what log files you need to look up to help you troubleshoot. So based on early feedback from the customers, that seems to really help you to find issues with ConfigMgr agent. All right, let's get some demos. Okay, need to get my machine reconnected now. I lost connectivity. And what I'm going to show you, some of them are still in development. You've never seen it even in our public preview yet. So this is really a very early stage of those features. But our developers, they're working really hard to make it possible for me to show it to you today. So I really want to walk through those new features. So from administration node, you can get to the management insights that I mentioned earlier. And this is a new dashboard that we use the management insight rules to do a weighted calculation to give you a score to show you for different categories how well your environment is doing. And there are multiple filters. So there are some rules that you already completed, you're done. And there are some rules that are optional, some are recommended. So if, say, I remove the recommended and optional, I'm 100%. My scorecard looks pretty good. And if I want to do some recommended best practice, and there are still some rules I need to finish. And you can see from different charts, like how many rules in those groups, and the priority-wise, how many are recommended, how many are optional. And you can also search by the group or by the name of the rule. Say you want to do something with your Windows 10. So we have a group of rules that's in the Windows 10 category, and we also have some rules that's in the cloud services. And with an easy search, you can easily find those rules. So our vision is that in each ConfigMgr release, we will be adding more rules based on our knowledge of the product, the best practices we want to recommend to you. We will just keep adding those. And then you can tell the rules will just grow more and more. So a flat list probably won't really help you much. So the search here is really something that we think can help you to identify what rules that you're most interested in. And back to our co-management, what kind of rules do we have? So in the cloud services category, we have a main rule to help you to assess co-management readiness. And in this rule, it has 3 sub-rules to show you how do you need to upgrade your Windows 10, do you need to configure your hybrid Azure AD join, or you need to get your Azure AD as an app in the cloud. So with all these rules assessing, then you know what kind of actions you can take. For example, configure Azure services to using ConfigMgr. If you click on this rule, you can take an action. And what it does is to take you to the Azure service node so that you can start configuring your Azure service. You can register that. You can register this app with Azure. I'm not going to go through the whole process. So backing out, going back to the main rule. And of course, you can see the different states of the rules. And from here, suppose that you are all ready and all the progress showing that you're completed, then you can use the main rule and take an action. That brings you to the co-management node so that now you can start configuring co-management. And you type in your Intune credentials from here.
Keystrokes don't count as clicks, do they? I don't think so.
Okay. I think I can still type on the podium. All right. So when I go next, here, those are two paths that I mentioned earlier. On the upper side, that's where you can enable auto-enrollment. And for a lot of people, you probably feel more comfortable if you start with a pilot group. So you define your pilot group and the membership, and you can enable enrollment. And later on, once you see everything goes smoothly, really no end user impact, you can scale that up. You can even move this to the production, to all. So that's what you do with the auto enrollment. And for the devices that you provision through autopilot that you want to bootstrap ConfigMgr agent, this is the command line. You can copy over to Intune so that when you upload the Bootstrapper app through Intune, you can define this command line inside so that the agent knows which MP to talk to, what kind of configuration it needs to use. And for now, you don't really have to worry about any sliders that you want to move. That's something you can consider later on. You can always come back and go next. You can define your staging with your pilot group. Here, I want to use for my Windows 10 clients. And now I'm done, enabling co-management. Behind the scenes, these devices will be enrolled automatically into Intune. So I've shown you how to get ready to co-management, how to use the ConfigMgr policy, co-management policy to configure auto-enrollment. And say after a while, you're really interested in using compliance policies, then you can tell ConfigMgr, now I really want Intune to take over for compliance policies. And this is where you move the sliders. As I mentioned earlier, for the new sliders that we introduced in 1806, device configuration, this is like a superset of all the settings that you can use Intune to manage. And there are two child nodes for endpoint protection and resource access policies. So if you feel more ready to use the subset of those settings, you can move them first. You don't have to wait until you're ready for the entire device configuration. Maybe for some other things you're not ready for Intune to use. Or you can move the entire one to pilot. So there's logic built in to coordinate between the parent and the child. And there's another thing to mention is, I can get this back. To mention is that for device configuration, even though, as I said earlier, that it's a coordinated effort that we block ConfigMgr side once it's taken over by Intune, we also understand that MDM policies, sometimes there's still gaps, that you still want to use ConfigMgr to manage your configuration items, configuration baselines. So in order for you to do that, you can go to your configuration baseline. So say I have a BitLocker configuration baseline. In the properties, I can make an exception on this baseline saying, even for co-managed devices, I still want this policy to go down to the device. And then Intune understands that, and ConfigMgr understands that. So as long as you craft your policies there shouldn't be conflicts with each other, then you can really see. And you can also see if you make what kind of exceptions you make on the console by looking at this new column called co-management exception. So from here, you know exactly what you've already configured. So you've enabled co-management. Sometimes you also decided to transition your workloads, and you want to know how well you're doing, right? So in the monitoring, we already have a dashboard for co-management. And what I'm showing you now is also something new that's not being released in public preview yet, and we're still working on the schedule. But this is a preview for you to see. We're making effort to show you more on the stages that when enrollment happens, when you first start with the common denominator of the eligible machines, which should be Windows 10, 1709, and above. And for those eligible machines, how many of them are scheduled, how many of them that you already see enrollment being initiated, and how many actually being enrolled. So with the funneled view, you get a good idea of those different buckets. And we also have granular errors. We also bucketize these errors for hybrid AAD joined machines versus the Azure AD joined machines. We have different enrollment errors for you to look at. We group them by, like sometimes the user canceled the login when they use Hello for Business, they stop in the middle, or no user actually logged on, so that's why the enrollment never happened. And sometimes some issues with the user license and whatnot, or servers fail to authenticate. So with those different errors, that you have a clear picture of how things are going with the auto enrollment. And down below, you can see what workloads being swung over to Intune. For now, it's only showing for compliance policies. Right. So that's it for the demo. I'm switching back to presentation. So we have new cloud value coming up pretty much on a monthly basis. Intune is updating every month. And you probably have seen from previous sessions on the new things coming up from Intune, so I'm not gonna just read through them. There's one thing I really wanted to highlight, which is also we're currently working on, that we don't have a fixed schedule when to release yet, is that with the co-management, with the knowledge from ConfigMgr and Intune side, for compliance policies that you want to use to control the device access to the corp resources, you can leverage the knowledge from ConfigMgr side as well. ConfigMgr already has a set of rules to do these assessment, such as if you have the latest updates, or we're also adding a new rule called required apps, if your apps are being updated to the latest version. So ConfigMgr has knowledge of that, and if you chose to combine that knowledge, you can do so from Intune side, and then this information will be sent to Intune and will be aggregated as the final status. So from the diagram, this is a high-level workflow. So the first two steps is basically just get your machine co-managed, and then ConfigMgr evaluates the status and send to Intune. And then Intune does its own evaluation based on the rules that it's seen, and then generates this combined report and send to AAD. And AAD will finally do the actual control. So for the devices that are compliant, then they're happy clients. They can access those corporate resources. And if something's wrong from either ConfigMgr side or Intune side, then the access is blocked, and we have user-friendly information to tell the end user what happens, what needs to be fixed. So this is also early development of the UI that, as I mentioned, that you can specify on the Intune side that you really want to leverage ConfigMgr knowledge, and you pick a rule from the ConfigMgr compliance policies, And then your end users will see this from the Software Center for any non-compliant status. All right, I'm heading this back to Tristan to wrap it up.
I want to talk about compliance policies just a bit more because I think it's really powerful. After you turn on co-management, you get that instant value of, look, now you can see all of your devices, you can take remote actions on them. The most common thing people are looking at next is Intune compliance policies. And what Heidi showed you is you kind of have the best of both worlds. There are opportunities to add different compliance evaluations from ConfigMgr, but there's lots of things in Intune that you just can't do with compliance policies in ConfigMgr. If you're interested in real-time access protection with things integrated with like Defender ATP that send real-time signals into Intune compliance evaluation, and if you want to have things like custom actions for your users where you send them an email 10 days before, 5 days before to say, hey, you're about to get blocked access to email, you need to go make sure this device is compliant, you have those things in Intune. So if you're looking for places to start, that's one I'd definitely look at. But in summary, so yeah, M365 Cloud, most comprehensive, easy to use. You can stop asking us if ConfigMgr is going away. I have no doubt we'll need to restate it again next year, but hopefully not. We've never said it's going away. It's not going away. It's going to be here as long as you need it. We just want to make it easy for you to get access to the M365 Cloud value. Hopefully you got a glimpse of that. Our guidance is to pick that thing that you want to do next and just know that there's an easy path to go do it. If you haven't looked at Fast Track yet, it's free. These guys have a lot of experience that can kind of customize the advice to your specific situation, so worth giving them a call. I think that's the end of it. We have a big list of other related sessions, many that have already completed, but you can find them available for streaming afterwards. We would appreciate if you give us any feedback on this session. Hopefully this all made sense. A lot of this was formed off of feedback from people in this room over the last year, so if this made sense, please let us know. If you have additional feedback, of course, we're interested. And we have 2 minutes and 50 seconds for questions. There are microphones over there if you guys can go to them. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that working? I don't think it's working.
Is that mic ready to go?
Can you hear now?
Get right in there, yeah.
So the workflow that you had going, is that assuming CMG is in place?
For the second route, when we talk about modern provisioning, that if you use autopilot to bootstrap Intune agent, then it's optional. It's CMG. Then for that one is required, but not the first pass. The first pass for existing ones, you don't need CMG to be set up.
Okay, so are you saying for autopilot you do not need CMG? Is that what you're saying?
If the device is provisioned from out over the internet, then you need CMG, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, we'll stick around for a bit afterwards. Thanks for coming. Oh, one more. Let's get this one on the record.
Yeah. Hello. We are only on-prem, and we don't have any internet, and we got 15 networks. Can we harvest all the benefits from Intune if we buy Asia Stack or something?
By what did you say?
Asia Stack, or what's called that in-house cloud solution?
No, you're going to need to have internet access to use our cloud services.
All right. Then as a config manager, if we do go cloud someday, I don't think we do. It's the military, so we don't.
Right. Well, and just to give a little bit of context, like a lot of that cloud value is real-time intelligence. We're assessing signals from all across the cloud, and that's how you get those real-time, hey, this user is at risk or this region is at risk, so block access right now.
All right.
So yeah, that's where we invest with Intune.
Yeah, but then we gotta have two consoles now as a config manager, Intune and config manager.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to have two consoles. You could go straight to the cloud, but we don't want to force you to rip away. So yeah, we're trying to make it as flexible as we can.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. We'll do one last question.
Hi.
Hi.
So when you linked SCCM to Intune, you used an account to authenticate. Is best practice to use a service account, or is that a one-time connection and it just knows to keep working?
It's a one-time connection.
Okay.
Yeah, you use your Intune account for that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
So there's not a, just to add a little bit more, there's not a real-time data stream across ConfigMgr to Intune. This is sending the signal to the device, that the device should go auto-enroll into Intune. So now the device is directly engaged with Intune at that point.
Does
All right,
that
thanks.
account have to be an Intune admin or a global admin to link that?
Does it need to be a global admin or an Intune service admin?
I think it's an Intune service admin. Should be sufficient.
Yeah. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you. We're going
good
to
rest of the night.
hang around a bit.